Allow me to introduce you to James. Listen up, James. I hope you're good because I'm not going to carry you. No one's carried me since my mama. And then they proceeded to be the worst at their jobs for the next 20 years. No, you don't get it. Jesse and James are the absolute best there is at their jobs, but they have no idea what their jobs are. They think that they're thieves, agents of an elite criminal group led by Giovanni, stealing rare Pokemon and advanced technology and such. And there might have been a time this actually was their jobs. In the first season or two, they frequently get angry phone calls about how they fucked everything up, or get their expense account cut off because they have literally never turned a profit on their criminal enterprises and constantly procure and then destroy expensive and elaborate devices. But then, the world came within a hair's breadth of being destroyed several times, and Jesse, James, and their weird cat rescued everybody. As terrible as they've always been at criminal endeavors of any kind, when the apocalypse approaches and they're forced to step up, they're really fucking good at saving the day. And Giovanni is over here like, if the planet is destroyed, or time-space becomes unrecognizable, or civilization collapses, there's no way for me to run a profitable criminal enterprise anymore. I need this planet, because it's where I keep all my stuff. And I don't pretend to understand the why of it, but these couple of bumbling nutcases that I should have fired years ago seem to be an important component of that, somehow. So you gotta stop thinking about them in terms of acquisitions, and start considering them loss prevention. As in, even if you waste $1 million a month on giant cat-faced robots and a vast array of fancy ball gowns, and they never turn a profit, they are preventing all of your assets from going away at the same time because of something you can't do anything about. And that's the great secret behind Team Rocket. These guys aren't thieves. They're professional superheroes, sponsored by organized crime. Of course, nobody ever bothered to tell them that. Me crying in a fetal position in the bathtub? The water, what's up, sis? Me, there is no guarantee of anything, of any fulfillment. We are at the absolute mercy of the projections our brain chemicals impose upon us. Water, I'm just gonna go back to being liquid TIL. Till one of Frank Abagnale's first cons included disguising as a security guard, hanging a sign above a bank drop box that read, "Out of service, leave deposit with security guard." Later he commented how he could not believe it worked. How can a drop box be out of service? This is called a Bavarian fire drill, and the trick to pulling it off is to have absolute confidence that it's going to work. If you seem even the slightest bit nervous or hesitant, everyone will see right through it. Case in point, in 1906, a German con man named Wilhelm Voigt dressed up in a German army captain's uniform and entered the town of Köpenick, claiming to be an inspector. Inspector of what? He never specified. He managed to wrangle 10 German soldiers and a sergeant into assisting him, ordered the local police to halt all telephone calls to Berlin for an hour, arrested the mayor and treasurer for non-existent charges of crooked bookkeeping, and confiscated the town's entire treasury, complete with a receipt which he signed with his former jail director's name. He only got caught 2 weeks later because his former cellmate blabbed, and was later pardoned by Kaiser Wilhelm II, who found the whole thing hilarious. Sometimes I think I'm arrogant, but then I remember that Julius Caesar was kidnapped by Sicilian pirates, and when they demanded a ransom of 620 kilograms of silver, he got mad because he thought he was worth more than that, and made them raise it to 1,550 kilograms. He has also recited his own poetry to them. Dude, this is why you got stabbed by all your friends. You're telling me we had an actual, give us $10,000 and they will be returned to you unharmed. Whoa, wait, you think I'm only worth $10,000? Make it 1 million? Incorrect quote moment in IRL history? Occasionally forget people genuinely think capitalism is thousands of years old. One time I was talking about Robin Hood with some coworkers and one guy was like, he was bad because the people he helped learned to expect handouts. And I wanted to be like, okay, can you explain how that flawed capitalist propaganda applies to feudalism? Reminder that capitalism was literally invented in the 16th century. That's an exaggeration. What was invented in the 16th century was mercantilism. Capitalism really dates for the beginning of the 19th century, with the rise of industry and cash crops over artisans and merchants. Vulture capitalism, with the notion that companies have no duties other than generating profit, is even younger. Sometimes I randomly think about the time a girl posted in this girls-only Facebook group group I'm in telling everyone how she broke up with her boyfriend, and he lied, saying that he lost the spare key she gave him, only to then break into her apartment when she wasn't home and steal the cat they'd adopted while they were together. But then he denied having done this, and she didn't really have proof that he took the cat since he wouldn't let her come into his place and look for it. And then another girl saw this post and knew her ex-boyfriend, and she was like, "Girl, I used to hook up with your mans back in XXXXX, and I still have his number. If you want, I'll hit him up and get him to invite me back to his place and see if your cat's there." And the OP was like, "Bet." So this woman hit up Homie Dog, asked him out for drinks, went home with him, slept with him, and then woke up in the middle of the night and took the cat. Like she had only said that she would confirm if the cat was there, but then she took it upon herself to steal this woman's cat back. Like she full-on Trojan horse this man, and then hit up homegirl like, "I got the goods, where you want to meet?" And then the two of them posted a photo of them together with the cat to the group. And I just think women supporting women is so beautiful. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I require insulin to live multiple times a day. When I was in middle school many years ago, we didn't have insulin pumps and had to use syringes and vials like everyone else. The school refused to let me carry it with me, meaning I had to go to the nurse's office several times a day to inject. It's not just before lunch, but could be any number of times depending on the current blood sugar levels. The district then cut nurse staff to just spending half a day at 2 schools, and the nurse left before I had lunch. I asked the office staff to unlock the office so I could take my insulin and eat lunch. They refused. By middle school, I'd been dealing with T1 for about 5 years and didn't take shit on the topic. I went to the school lobby, picked up the payphone, I just dated myself, and called 911, telling them, "Hi, I'm at school. I am type 1 diabetic, and the office won't unlock a door and let me take insulin." They sent a fire truck, and a bunch of firemen met me outside and walked me to the office and asked, while ignoring the staff, which room was the nurse's office. I pointed to the door and he was like, "Okay boys, chop it down. This kid need his insulin." Suddenly, the office secretary could unlock the door and I didn't need to put it in the nurse's office every day anymore. Americans. Psst. You think 80 degrees Fahrenheit is hot? I'm from Big Texas. This is nothing, kid. I might put a coat on, actually. Europeans. Would 10 degrees Celsius is cold? This is shorts weather, bro. When you start pissing crystals, then we'll talk. Unattended raspberries. I went moldy while you were reading this. Whilst this is accurate to the squabble that people of differing climates have, I, an entity clearly brimming with joy and positivity, would like to add that different places do in fact have different climates. London's summer must not be above 20 degrees Celsius, just because Death Valley reaches 50 degrees Celsius. Other people suffering from temperatures that you are perfectly fine with just because it is beyond their normal climate is not a flex many think they are. Imagine you win the lottery and suddenly you're the only billionaire getting properly taxed. Record-setting $2 billion jackpot won by one person in Altadena, California. The person will receive $424 million after taxes. My dad is a cop, and I just called him, and he was like, "Hey, I have a 17-year-old boy in the back of my cop car right now that I'm running him to the station," and I asked if he was cute. And my dad said, "Hey, my daughter wants to know if you're cute." And the guy said, "I want to say yes, sir," and my dad started laughing so hard. You promised not to tell. Hitler promised not to invade Czechoslovakia, Jeremy. Welcome to the real world. One of the greatest moments in television history. I mean, technically, he only invaded Czechia. The Sudetenland was given by the Allies, which is where the Czech defensive line was. Slovakia was made into a separate protectorate state a day before Germany invaded the remaining Czech lands and made it into the new protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. 'Tis the season to unpack some stuff about Christmas from a minority perspective. Christmas is a Christian holiday. The fact that many celebrate it in an irreligious way, which is valid, does not change its origins, connotations, symbolism, nor what it has historically meant for religious minorities. The idea that Christmas is secular, read neutral, is a product of Christian hegemony and the blindness of many in Christian countries to the permeation of Christianity as default culture. When someone says they don't celebrate Christmas since it's a Christian holiday, it is not actually reassuring or helpful to say something along the lines of, "Oh well, it's just a secular day of family and presents for everyone, so you can celebrate it too." Though the above statement is usually well-intentioned, it is often distressing to hear because it is untrue and is erasing our lived experiences. The reflexive effort to make Christmas universal is a cultural reverberation of the millennia-old evangelizing effort to make Christianity universal, and as such, can be very uncomfortable for religious minorities. Most anti-phone advice is so inane and regurgitated to me, but one thing I've been thinking about for days is, Social media is okay, but the real danger comes in when you think your phone should be your go-to during your limited pockets of leisure. Like that's literally the truest thing ever. It really is true that after a long shift or a hard study session or a tiring workout, the first thing I think to do is doom scroll to reward myself. But as much as I try to combat my screen, I've never truly delved into why my phone should be my go-to during my downtime. Like, why is it the reward? Why is it not taking a nap, or getting a treat, or calling a friend, or even reading a book? It's like I do those things the idea in mind that that's when I'm on, but what if they should be my downtime rewards instead of phone time? And this comes from someone who does not necessarily think social media is the devil BC. I totally understand why people use it and how it makes connecting easier. But I see older patients all the time, and it's so striking to me how they don't have attention issues and how their reward system is wired so differently. My 52-year-old boss rewards herself for an 8-hour workday by taking a run after work, like immediately after work. She does have a phone, and she does use it, but it's not her reward during downtime at all. She does not need a phone break in between things, because those things are what nourish her. And that's just fascinating to me, BC. For my generation, a peek at their phone is the ultimate reward. Last thing, BC, I feel like if this reaches more people, they'll be like, reading or talking to a friend aren't downtime activities, and like, okay, that's so fair. I think the whole point is finding a default downtime activity that feels right for you, while also not taxing you mentally. Like, this is not me saying go full blackout on your phone. Also, it's just true that doom scrolling is not as passive as people think it is. I literally do it too. And your brain is still burning out from taking in so much at once, so investigating if it's the holy grain brain-off activity really is valid. Doctors should snark at each other more. Be a bit mean. Not for no reason, mind you. But if 5 doctors blow me off about symptoms and doctor number 6 finally runs actual tests and gets a diagnosis, I think it should be Dr. 6's right to call up the other 5 and tell them they're lazy pieces of shit. That should be socially encouraged. Those first 5 doctors clearly can't listen to patients, but maybe another doctor might finally get to them. Doctors should have an ELO rating, and if it's too low, they have to redo their residency. Doctors should have patient ratings with detailed reviews. Imagine being able to avoid a bigoted Dr. BC. He wouldn't listen to me about my pronouns and insisted that I needed to lose weight before he'd even consider HRT. Or finding a great Dr. BC. They listened when I complained about my joints hurting and I was able to get diagnosed. Or even just less than mid doctors BC. She listened about my stomach pain and had blood labs drawn, but also told me to lose weight about it and come back in 3 weeks. Just patient reviews that went onto doctors' professional records could literally change healthcare, especially for marginalized groups. So I'm currently working at a law firm, and the other day one of the attorneys was talking to me and he mentioned that he's not very confrontational, and I was like, "You are? A lawyer?" And he said, "Yeah, but in court there are rules. I can argue with some schmuck in a suit in front of a judge, no problem. But when I leave the courthouse and go home, I'm not going to argue with my wife about dinner. There are no rules in our kitchen. I would die. There are no rules in our kitchen. I would die." I think there's something to be said that saying the words deny, defend, depose, you're next to an insurance sales rep can get you arrested for threats of mass homicide or whatever with a threat of 15 years in prison. But when I was a manager in a fast food restaurant, I've had customers throw food at me, demand for my personal phone number with an added threat of, well, I'll just have to find it. Customers charging past the front counter to physically intimidate me and my coworkers, screaming and swearing, demands to know what time I get out of work, demands to know when my manager would be at work as a threat, people sitting in their car waiting for me to finish closing because they were angry at me, causing me to stay in the office watching the camera waiting for them to drive away. But none of those incidents are arrestable offenses, not one. Anytime I called the cops on any customer, I would just hear excuses like, there isn't anything illegal about calling a restaurant, that nothing physical happened and therefore there's nothing they could do to call back and let them know if anything else happens. IDK, just think it's a teeny tiny bit odd. Cop in the news goes, words have consequences, as if people don't berate and threaten fast food and retail workers every day. In 20 years, you won't remember the time your kids didn't finish their dinner, but they'll remember how you freaked out and yelled about it. Last year, I was talking with my mom about parenting, and she said, well, at least I never made you feel like I didn't love you. I proceeded to tell her about a time when I was a kid and she was yelling, screaming, and throwing things, and I said, I love you, in that small, timid kid voice, and she said, well, I don't love you right now. Our relationship was never the same after that, and she didn't even remember that it happened. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. When I was little, I had an argument with my dad over something neither of us remember. All I remember is I was really upset and scared. Well, that night, he tucked me into bed and said, "Good night." I said, "Good night, I love you." He never responded. Wouldn't reply when I shouted it down the hall, crying because I thought I had made him stop loving me. He wouldn't even respond the next day when I tried talking to him. I cried myself to sleep for a week before he acknowledged it. Let me get one thing clear. It was just that one night that he didn't say it back. But now, 7 years later, I'm 15, almost 16, and I start panicking if he doesn't say it at some point every day. So I have to insist on it. He doesn't remember this, and it's one of, if not the biggest reason is I have such a hard time with my self-esteem. 1. The reason why Christianity and languages like English, Spanish, and French are so spread out in the world, primarily in the West but not entirely, is because of colonialism and violence. People rarely mass convert and give up all their own languages, beliefs, and traditions by choice. 2. If you can understand the above statement, then you also need to learn to apply that to other religions and languages that have spread massively in parts of the world and give space to people who need to talk about the kinds of colonialist violence in their cultures and communities that you aren't personally familiar with, like the Islamic conquest throughout Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe. 3. This also applies to massive countries. We can understand how Canada and the US grew so large through colonialist expansion and by displacing, absorbing, and killing the original inhabitants of the lands, but we also need to apply that to countries like Russia and China that have also become so large through expansionism and violence. 4. These things do not make any religion, language, nationality, etc. inherently bad or violent, because anything and everything can be used to justify atrocities, but we need to recognize and acknowledge these realities to avoid repeating and contributing to them. We also need to boost the voices of the religious and ethnic minorities under these colonial and imperialist powers, especially as those powers work harder to silence those minorities and repaint their violent histories as just peaceful and respectful expansion. Has anyone else noticed how successive governments' wars on teenagers, homeless people, and other undesirables have left us with basically zero public seating, or water fountains, public washrooms, outdoors tables, etc., etc.? Superman desperately scanning the street during a fight to find the most morally acceptable car to throw at his opponent, knowing that not everybody has insurance and loss of transportation can ruin a life. A wave of incredible relief washes over him as he spots the hard geometric lines and silver paintless sheen of a Cybertruck. Apparently, Europeans have the impression that US Americans never learn the metric system. Like our science curriculum from day one is entirely done in the metric system. We just don't use metric in our day-to-day lives. I hope you guys know that's more insane. You're learning a whole measurement system you don't use that is more insane than just not knowing it. Yeah, actually, we kinda just do it for the bit. I have had people try to gently and kindly explain to me the workings of the metric system, as if Americans are having trouble with the concept of a base 10 system. Like, no, we get it. We were taught this when we were like 8. It's just that, like, we don't really want to do it that way. For the bit. It's like formal and informal tense. At some point in your life, you were taught that being slightly annoying is an unforgivable sin. Maybe it was by your parents or a teacher or a friend or a bully or an older sibling, but someone taught you that being slightly annoying is a crime punishable by death. You must unlearn this. You must accept that all people will be annoying at some point or another in their lives, maybe all of their lives, and that this is okay. It is okay for strangers on the bus. It is okay for children in the grocery store. It is okay for people on social media. And it is okay for you. If you ever want to truly love your fellow humans, if you ever want to truly love yourself, you must have forgiveness for being annoying. I saw a comment on an article about how women are vastly outpacing men in employment and higher education that was something like, "It is a problem that women are now more educated and more likely to have higher paying jobs than their male counterparts, because women do not want to date below their station," which was so fucking stupid because, and I'm going to be very frank here, educated, high-earning women love uneducated loser men. It is usually the man who cannot stand that his wife is more educated and/or intelligent and making more money than him. Dudes will be making $80,000 a year while their wife makes $150,000 a year and earnestly say, "Honey, I think you should quit your job and stay home when the baby comes." It's not that most women are averse to dating men who are less educated and less wealthy than them. It is that a significant amount of men feel extremely emasculated emasculated if their SO is superior to them in any way. People make a lot of good "thank God I'm not a kid anymore" posts about like school bullies or homework or puberty. But actually, my number one top of the "thank God I'm not a kid anymore" list is the fact that I can leave the event when I want to. Any event I'm at. I can say, okay, well, I'm tired, I'm going home, goodbye. Could not do that shit as a kid. If you're a kid, it's like, yeah, you will sit here at your brother's soccer game in the cold for the next 1.5 hours. You will sit here at your sibling's football practice. You will stay at this BBQ until the whole family is done with the BBQ. You are stuck at the mall until mom finds the pants she needs. You are stuck at the grocery store. No, we don't know how long. You are stuck at band practice. It's running late, but you're not allowed to leave. You are stuck at the party that the adults said you're leaving soon, but they keep talking to these two people who showed up late. What the fuck? And that shit is on top of having homework. As an adult, don't ask your friends to help you move. Hire movers, save a friendship. I want to help you move. And I want you to take me to urgent care when I can't drive, and I want to watch your kid for a night to give you a break, and I want you to cook me a meal just because, and I want to pick you up when your car breaks down. Because we're friends, and friends help. I miss when you could touch a TV and feel its fur. When an old TV died, it was always very understandable. Screen busted, tubes broke, animal sick. Smart TVs will have psychosomatic problems that clear within a day. Your Apple TV gets mental illness. Tech used to die a honorable death of blow up the fuck and burn the house down. Now it's all like, wah wah mommy, I can not update. If you ever meet someone who calls Gatorade flavors the actual name of the flavor instead of just the color, they are 100% a cop. Yeah, but you gotta specify Frost Glacier Freeze or Cool Blue. You can't just say Blue BC. There's more than one blue. Blue and light blue, nice try, officer. Y'alls are full of shit because I'm allergic to one of the blues, so I have to specify the flavor if I want any. Blue and death blue. This used to be true, but now they go around fucking up red Gatorade. I want original red fruit fucking punch flavor without having to peer at tiny silver on silver writing to find out if it's with a splash of raspberry or some ridiculous nonsense like that. Red. I want red flavor. Gatorade. Stop making me have to act Ike a narc. So the thing about my family is that we have two ancestors on my dad's side who were buried in France, where I currently live. One died in the Spanish Civil War, and one died prior doing we don't know what. But he somehow managed to get buried in Père Lachaise. So anyhow, my gran sends me a message like, PLS put flowers on her Uncle Samuel's grave because he's gone over a century with none, and it will make the ghost mad if he hasn't already. Because my family spends time in Europe, but never long enough to go all the way to Père Lachaise and give your boy Samuel Jr. his death rites. So I'm like, okay, Gran, I can do that. Beast him a good grandson and you do not fuck with Gran. She doesn't deserve that. I figure out which plot he's on and ask someone specifically where you can find Uncle Samuel Jr. and they tell me where, and so I arrive at the junction and he gone. Where did you go, Uncle Samuel? Celine Dion's smash hit, My Heart Will Go On, playing in the distance. In other words, either someone stole my entire great-great-uncle Samuel, or he has risen again, ready to party in Paris for all of eternity. Apparently, when my grandma first came to America, she didn't know what a raccoon was and assumed it was a fucked-up cat and adopted it. I just imagine this 13-year-old girl with a heavy Eastern European accent being like, "This is my cat, Peter. He is not very friendly. This is my cat, Peter. He is not very friendly." I have a beautiful video of a raccoon where my Scottish partner whispers in the background. I didn't know they were real. To be fair, I didn't realize reindeer were actually a real thing until I got to the top of a hill in Loch Lomond and made eye contact with one standing maybe 10 feet away for a couple of minutes. He might as well have gone, "Ya right, mate?" I've seen enough horror movies starring upper-middle-income white families stuck in spacious haunted mansions. Give me stories about millennials stuck in haunted studio apartments. Consider the realism. Why is this protagonist staying in an obviously haunted building despite the glaring warning signs? Because a week at a motel would send them spiraling into credit card debt. They'll take their chances with the vengeful spirits. Why did they choose this apartment complex to begin with, despite the many unexplained mysterious deaths that show up on the first page of a Google search? Some of us don't have the credit score to move away from high, paranormal crime areas. How could I be so careless as to sign a soul-binding contract with a demonic entity? Bitch, they're called landlords. I'm 14, at the beach in my hometown, feeling like, whatever, it's so boring, who cares really? And then this woman ran out onto the sand and exclaimed, It's the ocean. I ask, what? I grew up in Colorado. I've never seen the ocean. My God, there's so much water. Tears began to stream down her face, and I thought, we're on the same beach, but mine is boring, and hers is beautiful. And if I have to choose, I'd rather be in on her beach. As she walked away, continuing to exclaim about palm trees and coconuts, I thought about how easily time makes us numb to beauty and how I didn't want to live that way anymore. For the rest of my childhood, the beach was very different. Yeah, try living in Ohio. I was actually just up in Ohio for the solar eclipse, and did you know I'd never seen spring before? I thought I had, because down here in Florida we do get some flowers and nice green leaves as the weather shifts from cool to hot, but the trees are never bare and the flowers just blend in with the rest of the trees, and in comparison, this actual spring was some sort of magical wonderland. I swear to God, I've never seen anything like it. Apple blossoms are so pretty, the subtle changes of the colors, and they take up the whole tree and they're so damn beautiful. I had never seen them before. We don't have any apple trees down here at all, but now they might be my favorite flower. I'm familiar with cherry blossoms. We do have some cherry trees, but not like this. This tree was entirely pink and stood out so much. No leaves or anything on the trees, just flowers everywhere. I see why people like spring and cherry blossoms so much, I think. And Edek what these are, but look at that. Life and color. Spring. So yeah, I went to Ohio, and I thought it was beautiful, and I wanted to share that with you. Your state is wonderful. So as we have come to learn, hibiscus tea is one of the healthiest things you can drink, but I'm not much for tea without milk. In Mexico, I learned how to make a drink called agua de Jamaica. You basically boil hibiscus flowers, fresh ginger slices, a cinnamon stick, orange slices and lime slices for 10 minutes, then let it steep until cool. Pour it through a sieve and bottle it. It makes a concentrate that you then add ice and water flat or fizzy to. I then took the leftover steeped flowers and removed all the fruit slices and such and made quesadillas with it. I fried onions and garlic, then added the flowers and put it into the quesadillas with daya lettuce and tomatoes. Serve with guac vegan sour cream and salsa. I also made the spelt flour tortillas from scratch. Such amazing flavors and no waste. Me. I guess I was technically homeless for a while as a kid, but we weren't like really homeless. After we got evicted from our rental house, we had to stay in a small industrial warehouse that was being rented for storage by some family friends. Like, it sucked, and I wasn't allowed to go outside, and it was a huge secret I had to keep from everyone at school because my parents were terrified I'd be taken away by CPS, and if the cops or property owner had found us, we definitely would have been in trouble, but like, we had a roof over our heads. Does that count as homeless? I don't know. My friends who have genuinely never been homeless, ever. That is not normal. Holy shit me. Okay, so I guess I was homeless then. Anyway, this is a reminder that homelessness encompasses more than just lives in a box under an overpass. Like, yes, that is definitely a real experience with homelessness, but it isn't the only one. Homelessness can look like couch surfing, living in your car, living illegally in a rented storage unit, living in a tent at a campground, living in a motel room, or any number of other things. Also, imposter syndrome around homelessness is just about the weirdest feeling in the world, TBH. The, was I suffering enough to say I was suffering? Thoughts are eternal. I'm absolutely screaming my 6th graders had to write essays about their favorite celebrities, and one girl wrote hers about Abraham Lincoln. Please remember that I don't live in America. This is a 12-year-old Korean girl, and when asked about her favorite celebrity, her mind automatically jumped to the 16th President of the United States. Immortality sucks because all your friends die. All your friends die anyway. Those we do not mourn are those who mourn us. Immortality sucks because you forget who you are. We always forget who we are. Do you remember who you were at 4 years of age? Who you were at 14? Who I am is a shadow cast on the wall. Immortality sucks because skill issue. Skill issue. Skill issue. Give me your liver. Immortality sucks because I don't want to be alive now, let alone alive forever. 1. For as long as I can remember, I've felt a deep, heavy sense of loneliness. True wrong. You have selected wrong answer. This is how it feels to talk to my parents about my mental health. Life really does align in weird ways. My bully from 5th grade who snapped my glasses in front of his friends just found me on social media a few weeks ago. He wrote me a long apology saying how he was now a father to a 3-year-old little girl and was taking her to get her first pair of little glasses in the next few days, and it brought back what he did. He said couldn't ever handle the idea of someone doing that to her. My first instinct was to tell him to get lost, but I realized I was getting what I always prayed for. I just wanted the people who were mean to me to eventually understand it, even if it took a personal experience to relate to and 14 years to open their eyes. A piece of me healed in that moment as I gave him glasses advice for his daughter, because I was the same age when I got my first pair. Kids are really ruthless, but it takes a healed adult to reach out to apologize. And there is always time to change. It's never too late. Vampires really should be able to get drunk. They literally have to be alive forever. Let them have this. HC. Vampires have no blood, so they get drunk faster than people. Charlie pulling over a shirtless Carlisle at 4 a.m. Dr. Cullen, your blood alcohol content is literally 100%. How are you not dead? Carlisle. Au contraire, I'm absolutely dead. I did not expect a decent Twilight joke on my dash in 2019, but nevertheless there it is and it's hilarious. Aura is just Gen Z like a boss. Peak slop is guilty pleasure. The circle keeps spinning and there's no way to stop it. I tend to my secret flame, it's all so brittle. My health bar appears on screen so frail. Mid used to be meh, cringe used to be gay. This torpid and rotten blade used to gleam with such magnificence. And you would put our glories to song that none might recall this miserable end, so be it. My mom bought a "All My Children Have Paws" mug in an effort to disown us in favor of her dogs, but she is blissfully unaware of the fact that 2 of her children are actually furries. Why do you know your sibling is a furry? I made them a furry. This is why she's disowning you. Are we going to ignore the fact that a mother loves her dog more than her children, or it could be a well-intended joke between the mother and the kids? I'm an only child, so I got to grow up being the favorite child. Whenever I did something wrong, my mother would say that the dog was her new favorite child. One time, though, the dog took a shit in her closet, immediately after saying that, so the cat got to be the favorite child for a day. It was all a joke between me and my mom, though, and never hurt me. Like if the mother and the kids all think it's funny, that's great. Especially because the kids get an even bigger laugh out of it by being secretly furries. My fave SCP is Jeff, who is basically a regular guy who doesn't even work at the SCP Foundation, but just happens to keep wandering into high-security parts of the building by accident somehow and escapes containment the same way. Like it says, it's an SCP on probation because they can't prove if he has some supernatural power or if he's just a guy who knows all of the passwords to the SCP Foundation. I think my favorite part are the transcripts. Commander Price. All right, people, it's go time. I want suppressing fire on this thing now. Neptune Squadron, hit it with everything you've got. If this thing gets one claw to the surface, then SCP-008J. Hey, I remember you, Commander Price. Exasperated and enraged. Fuck! SCP-008J. Can you help me out? I'm a bit turned around. I'm trying to get to Gray Street. Commander Price, we're 3,000 meters under the fucking ocean. SCP-008J produces smartphone. Well, that explains why my map won't load. Commander Price, who the flaming Christ are you? SCP-008J. Jeff, remember? Hey, are you on Facebook? I feel like I keep running into you. We should be friends. Jeff is tormenting this poor commander for no reason. Enough toxic masculinity. I'm ready for salubrious Mexicanity. I'm ready for a social movement that encourages, especially straight cis men, to indulge in things that make them more joyful, emotionally healthy, and help them strengthen not core muscles, but core compassionate communication skills. I cannot stress enough that I have a minor speech impediment, and voice-to-text decided it was more likely that I said Mexicanity than masculinity. I was not in fact alluding to the potential healing benefits of being Mexican. I am, however, perfectly content with this post being about that instead. Many thanks to those who thought this post was about Gomez Adams. From this moment forward, Tis. Glad to see my tags have been greenlit by the studio audience. Gomez Adams. Peak masculinity. This is what the machismo ideal looks like. He's short. He worships his tall, scary wife. Every night is ballroom dancing date night. And he waltzes with such swagger. He is so excited each and every day to wake up and be a husband, a father, a brother. He encourages all of his family in their interests. He is a friendly and tries to be a helpful neighbor. He spends his time sword fighting and loving his family and playing with train sets, or to peak performance. I babysit for a girl who used to think her mom's name was My Love because her dad said it so often to her, and that's just freaking cute. I can't. I thought my mom's name was Honey for the same reason. For a good stint of my toddler hard preschool hood, I called her Mommy Honey, LMAO. Was chatting to another nurse about the floor I'm on right now, and that nurse said, referring to the charge nurse tonight, "Oh yeah, she's a power-hungry monster. She'd be charge nurse every shift if she could." And then later, the nurse said she had only stayed long, a 16 HR shift, can you imagine, because her girlfriend was also working late, and I was like, "Oh, who's your girlfriend?" And the nurse said, "It's the charge nurse." And I was like, "The power-hungry monster." And the nurse was like, "Yes." Meanwhile, in prehistoric Canada, no, you don't understand. Moose really do get that big. Take it from a Canadian. I've seen that bullshit in person. Scary as all heck, and that's how people can die if they hit a moose. Seriously, one of our fears when driving in the country is having to deal with this scenario of a moose jumping out in front of the car. Moose are actual legit Ice Age megafauna. They've been here since the Ice Age. They are old as fuck. They also are pretty terrifying, and I've echoed this before, but I went to Wiki, and in terms of raw numbers, they attack more people than bears and wolves combined. And, in the Americas, moose injure more people than any other wild mammal, and, worldwide, only hippopotamuses injure more. Like, fuck off with that. These fuckers are the Avatar Kyoshi of animals. Like 8 feet tall and ancient. Therapist. The semi-hemi-demi-semi-quaver isn't real. It can't hurt you. The semi-hemi-demi-semi-quaver. Can someone who speaks sheet music translate for me? Fast. Brava. 8. Semi-brava. 4. Minim. 2. Crotchet. 1. Quaver half. Semi-quaver. A quarter. Demi-semi-quaver. 1/8. Hemi-demi-semi-quaver. 1/16. Semi-hemi-demi-semi-quaver. 1/32. These names are dumb NGL. Do is the French on French horn J. For a trumpeter, this is a nightmare. Brooding men who cannot communicate their feelings if their life depended on it are only hot when they're fictional. If I have to deal with one in real life, I will curse him and pray for his downfall every night before I go to bed. It's because the writer communicates their feelings for them. If people want to pull that off in real life, they need to hire a guy to walk around behind them narrating. Something I am utterly obsessed with is the physical copy of Dracula that I recently purchased that has, as part of its foreword, some of the original idea notes that Bram Stoker had about what Dracula's vampiric powers or traits would be. One of these is that Dracula's likeness cannot be captured in a painting. He always looks like someone else, which only leads me to imagine a scenario in which the Count lines many of his castle hallways with paintings of himself throughout the centuries, but none of them look the same and none of them look like him, but Jonathan can't help but notice they all somehow look eerily similar. He brushes it off, assuming they are simply counts of generations past. I really like this. I love ideas that lean into vampires being intrinsically unnatural and being anathema to the natural world, rather than the usual apex predators, with maybe a dash of magic. Random story thought, what if a fantasy story where there's humans and elves who are less like different nationalities and or human, but in a different font, but more like the difference between dogs and wolves, like they resemble humans but are very, very clearly not human. And half-elves, like wolf dogs, are known to be theoretically possible, but so improbable and rare that they might as well be a myth. Like everybody's school had that one kid who loves lying for attention, who keeps insisting that they actually know somebody who's a real half-elf for real. And in the extremely rare case where they're friend of a friend who's totally actually a real half-elf even exists at all, 99 times out of 100, the aforementioned suspected hybrid is just a 100% full human who's unusually tall, beautiful, and autistic. Something that can definitely fool someone who's never seen a real half-elf and is willing to believe that this friend's mom actually for real fucked an elf, instead of getting hunted for sport and possibly eaten, which is the more likely outcome of encountering elves in the wild. But it's almost always just a full human with vaguely elvish features. But once in a blue moon, there actually is a real half-elf, and once you've seen one, you won't mistake a full human for one of them again. They're gangly, not just tall, but long-limbed in a way that humans are not. Their speech is strangely composed, as if they learned their first language as a second language, and their eyes are piercing, wild, inhuman eyes, with a gaze full of strange instinctive wisdom that humans were never meant to know. Secret elvish thoughts that even they personally wish they didn't have. And it sinks into you that elves that are so alien to you would also find this poor creature just as strange and unsettling as you do. My dad went to college in a really bad part of town when he was younger, and there were always a lot of homeless people asking for money. So he gave as much as he could to people, but there were so many people, so at a point he'd just start saying, "Oh, sorry, not today," and walk off. So this one day my dad was in a rush and this scruffy-looking guy comes up to him and mumbles something about money, and my dad just walked by and said, "Oh, sorry, not today," and he went inside the bookstore he was going to. Once my dad gets inside the bookstore, he turns around to see the guy who came up to him outside looking very angry. And then he realized that the guy had said, "Give me all your money." So my dad said, "Oh, sorry, Not today. To someone who was trying to mug him. You know you fucked up when you go to a doctor, and the thing you have wrong with you has been named after an occupation that isn't a thing anymore. Like imagine a doctor looking at you and going, yeah, you've got Oxdrawn-Plowman's disease. We don't even test for that anymore. Yeah, the reason you've never heard of it is because the last known case was in 1927 and happened to some guy who was like 98 years old and didn't believe in modern medicine of the time. What the fuck have you been up to? I just did the bofa thing to my mom and she goes, that's very rude, and I said, I'm sorry. I meant it as a parody. And she said, of what? Then I said, a parody's nuts. And I heard my dad laugh from the other room. We take it for granted today, but a single Dorito has more extreme nacho flavor than a peasant in the 1400s would get in his whole lifetime. I wanted to see exactly how much nacho flavor, extreme or otherwise, people had in the 1400s, considering the idea of eating fried tortillas with cheese could have come from any time period and been a good fish, but I learned that they were invented by Ignacio Nacho Inaya in Mexico in the 1940s. A bunch of women from the US showed up in his restaurant as he was closing, and he had to serve up something, so he cut up a tortilla into triangles, fried it with some salt, and threw a bunch of melted cheese and sliced jalapenos on it, and called it the Nachos Especial. In summation, a single Dorito has more extreme nacho flavor than a peasant from the 1400s would ever get in their whole lifetime, and more regular nacho flavoring than anyone before the 1940s would ever recognize is gone from their lives. My record player is cheap as shit and the needle keeps skipping, so I put a tiny pig on it as an arm weight. It's lighter than a coin and working perfectly, so I'm just gonna not bother the pig. Glad to know that record player technology has seemingly made zero advancements since I was taping pennies to mine back in the 70s. The technology has advanced a lot. There's a pig now. Neolithic and pre-pottery Neolithic farmers to a bunch of hick Epipaleolithic hunter-gatherers, probably. PSA, if your needle starts skipping, change it. 90% of the time, if it helps to put coins on the cartridge, it means your stylus is worn out and needs replacing. Search for the name of the turntable or cartridge plus stylus. Reblog to save someone's record collection. Because worn styly damage records, doubly so if you put more weight on them. As more news about that guy who shot that other guy breaks, please do keep in mind that cops always lie. Please do keep in mind that any information given to the press by law enforcement cannot be considered in any way reliable until it's been corroborated. Also, keep in mind that the arrested party is only a suspect, and he should be considered innocent until proven guilty. When you email your professor at 2 a.m., and they respond within a minute. Once in college, at 3 a.m., I couldn't get my printer to print out my assignment that was due at 9 a.m., so I emailed my professor with, I am Sleeping Beauty, and someday my prince will come. In the meantime, here is an electronic copy. And she emailed me back in like 5 minutes telling me she'd laughed so hard she startled her dog awake. OMG! One of my professors said they would email our test when they finished. I was up around 1 a.m. and I got an email of my graded test. I responded after going through it to ask if I should be worried. I got a response the next day at 7 a.m. in class that no, I shouldn't be worried. So in our small college, our professors were also our academic advisors. So they dropped the class schedule for the upcoming semester, and I'm pulling one of these trying to get all the classes I need to line up correctly. Like I'm in the anatomy lab in the middle of the night while other people are trying to study sketching this all out on the whiteboard. And I panic email my equine professor at 2 a.m. This isn't gonna work, assuming I'd hear from her later. And she emails back 5 minutes later, I can make some stuff happen, hit my office later today and we'll figure it out. Ma'am, your church-going, God-worshipping sister adopted a small child and you're excited to see them. But when you do, the child is a menace. They're throwing things everywhere, setting furniture on fire with seemingly nothing, chanting in Latin to summon demons. But the weirdest thing is that your sister doesn't seem to mind. You literally adopted the Antichrist, Anne. What the fuck? Yeah, I knew when I saw him at the orphanage. I figured if the kid had some decent fucking parenting that we could avoid the whole Revelations shite. Nasty business, that. George, whose name has been kindly changed from Damien, approaches his new mother with a huge spider in his hands. It promptly bursts into flames. Good job, love. Now go find the rest. George's face makes no expression, but his eyes shine when he receives a pat on the head for his efforts. The thing about living alone is that you never expect anyone else to do the dishes. And it turns out, doing the dishes is a lot less stressful than resenting someone for not doing the dishes. This I heard on a podcast, ladies. We need to talk very good that when we live alone, we do it for ourselves, we respect ourselves and want to live in a clean space. When we're in relationship, we're doing it being fueled with resentment that no one else did it. For me, it's so true. I've never been cleaner. And while I do have way less chores, I know no one is coming and messing it up again after me. So it's worth putting in that extra love for my space BC. It is so appreciated by me. Sometimes I see people from countries with public healthcare systems post videos that are like, this is the reality of socialized medicine. I had to wait in the ER with my sick baby for 4 hours. I had to wait 8 months to see a specialist. That's egregious. Or, they didn't have a bed for my loved one in mental health treatment. And it's like, come to America, baby girl. You can experience all of this and have your insurance deny it and pay thousands and thousands of dollars for it. Like, I know healthcare systems in countries with public health can be bad, but when I see someone imply they're bad because the healthcare is universal, I want to jump through the screen and put my elbow on their throat. The NHS is deeply flawed, therefore we should abolish it and go back to private healthcare. That will definitely make healthcare in this country better. I am going to kill you. There are 3 types of RPG players. Speed greater than damage, damage greater than speed. The pink one, because it looks cute on the character. Which one is you? You can't fight crime if you ain't cute. Always go with pink. Remember when Jimin's PUBG character was almost naked because he spent all his money to make his gun pink? We need to go back to using sailing ships full-time, like immediately. Yes, it would take longer to get places, but the aesthetic is unmatched. Like there is nothing sexier than this. Can't wait for OP to get scurvy. Are you under the impression that the ships themselves are what caused scurvy? Weren't these ships used for colonizing India and the slave trade? Once again, do you think this is the fault of the ships themselves? Tumblr users will try to make any ship problematic. I have a model of a ship and a ship in a bottle. Anyone who looks at them gets a tiny touch of scurvy. I know they're trying to colonize the kitchen. There's a plate with a little rowboat on it. I think they might be running a slave trade of Lego people. I have a Cap, Sam, Bucky, and Tony, and they keep disappearing and losing their clothes. Dating tip: if a guy tells you he's not very political, he's conservative but has learned that won't get him laid. Accurate. Inaccurate when I say I'm not very political. It's because I'm not. I'm a libertarian that leans conservative, but politics bore me. The next post on this dude's blog is about how women are naturally inferior. I honestly believe the whole adults require less sleep thing is honest to God probably a myth created by capitalism. It is. I honestly believe that sleep deprivation is the biggest ignored, neglected root cause of health dangers that prematurely kill adults. Ask me sometime about the role of sleep in the leptin-ghrelin cycle and how its interruption destabilizes weight homeostasis. Or about the new research showing that heart disease is not caused by fat like we thought for years, but by inflammation in the circulatory system whose root cause is unknown, but one of the prime suspects is, you guessed it, sleep deprivation. But nobody wants to hear that lack of sleep is killing people. Employers don't want to hear it. And God knows that having sold their waking hours to capitalism to survive, workers don't want to lose the only time they have left to them to live their lives, mostly stolen from sleep. I mean, even I don't want to do anything about it, and I love sleep. I just love Overwatch more. Did you know soap doesn't really clean your hands? It just makes the water molecules smaller, so the water can go into smaller crevices in your skin. Isn't that the weirdest shit you've read today? What the hell have you been reading? No. Soap works because soap molecules have a hydrophile and a lipophile end. The lipophile end binds to the dirt fat on your skin, the hydrophile end binds to the water molecules, thus allowing two substances that normally don't mix to interact. Fat is hydrophobic. It won't bind with water molecules, which is why you can pour olive oil on water and get two separate layers. Here's a picture. You can't make water molecules smaller because water is made of just 3 atoms to begin with, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. They're bound in a specific way because the oxygen atom has 2 unpaired electrons left over that sort of press down on the bound electron pairs. Think of trying to push 2 magnets of the same charge together, forcing them atoms to stay in a certain configuration because their charges won't let them go elsewhere. Adding more electrons, bindings could potentially squish the angle a bit, but that's minuscule. The entire molecule is minuscule already, way smaller than any creases in your hand. Also consider that the size of an atom is considerably dictated by the amounts of electrons orbiting it, orbitals. Empowering women by sending Katy Perry to space for 2 minutes. Shut the fuck up. Samantha Cristoforetti was the first female commander of the International Space Station, and she became an astronaut because of Star Trek. and there is a real chance she is a Kirk-Spock shipper. Here she is wearing a Starfleet uniform and drinking Space Espresso, IS Espresso, and not sadly, Spespresso. In primary school, we had a creative writing assignment where we had to write about a character in a new, strange situation, and I wrote about a squid that was somehow teleported from the ocean to the forest floor and slowly choked to death for 2 pages, and I'll never quite forget my teacher's face because it turns out she wanted, "This new school is scary, I hope I make friends," and not a graphic description of a squid dying. Well, that's just the risk you take if you decide to teach creative writing. On this day in history, March 28th, 1584, Ivan the Terrible, first Tsar of all of Russia, dies of a stroke. Really, they knew what a stroke was in the 1500s? Great question. Yes, strokes have been known for much of humanity. They were described in ancient Mesopotamian and Persian records in the 2nd millennium BCE, and Hippocrates, c. 400 BCE, known for the Hippocrates Oath, described them. They wouldn't figure out what caused a stroke for another 100 years after Ivan's death, and they certainly couldn't treat it, but they knew what it was. Martin Luther was another famous 16th century figure who died of a stroke. Sorry, not buying it. In 1921, early suffragettes often donned a bathing suit and ate pizza in large groups to annoy men. It was a custom at the time. How to make anything you do sound suspicious. Be mostly specific, i.e., yes, I bought this with legal tender money that was acquired legally. I met with a friend who is alive. I went to the still-standing, not-burned home of my enemies. I was in Wisconsin, and 12 when Princess Diana and her lover Dodi Al-Fayed were killed in Paris. You can feel the TV, it's warm. Alternatively, be extra vague. I went to a food place where I ate food. Me? I'm years old. Whatever the normal number is. But what does seriously injured even mean? Like, aren't we all closer to dead than we were a little while ago anyway? Bonus. Paris? Maybe? I've been lots of places. Oh yeah. I think I know of a captain, not a something, but we've never spoken. You can feel the TV. It's warm. I hate Spanish. Non-binary. No binaria, feminine. No binario, masculine. You could say no binaria if a girl is non-binary, or no binario if a boy is non-binary. My guy, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but seeing a Cybertruck in person is truly a bonding experience. Someone parked one of those monstrosities in a no parking zone at work, and me and my coworkers gathered like this. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. The silence is deafening. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. Half of them require you to create an account on the company website. You leave a trail of ghost accounts that will be used once and never again. You never receive a response. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. One employer offers an interview, but it's so rare for you to receive any response that you forget to check the website and you miss the time. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. One employer offers an interview, but you don't know the magic words that signal to the esoteric mind of an interviewer that you're fit for the job. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. One employer emails you saying that unfortunately you do not have the qualifications we are looking for. You check the job again and see you applied to be a menial laborer. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. Half of them require a car. No one stops to ask how you're supposed to afford one with no job. You apply for 20 jobs on Indeed. One employer offers a job. The commute makes you want to die in your sleep. You call the HR manager for the workplace in hopes of arranging an interview more directly. They don't even have an answering machine. Employers complain that no one wants to work anymore. Till nuclear power is actually better environmentally than coal. Via IFT.T. Atomophobia is a big oil plot TBH. Newer designs are even better. For example, a molten salt reactor can be designed so that it physically can't go into core meltdown. Because the radioactive fuel is dissolved in a molten salt compound, an overheating reactor can simply melt through a barrier, pour into a shielded chamber, and solidify back into a solid form. The best example uses liquid fluoride salt and radioactive thorium, which is cheaper, more plentiful, and less suited to weapons than uranium. Liquid fluoride thorium reactor is totally passively safe in case of accident. The reactor is equipped with a freeze plug, an open line where a frozen plug of salt is blocking the flow. The plug is kept frozen by an external cooling fan. In the event of total loss of power, the freeze plug melts, and the core salt drains into a passively cooled configuration where nuclear fission is impossible. My husband plays the trumpet, which is a sort of loud pretzel originally invented to blow down the walls of fucking Jericho, and later to let Civil War soldiers know it was time to kill each other in a river while you chilled eating pigeon in your officer's tent 20 miles away. Yet somehow, in modern times, It has become socially acceptable to toot the bad cone inside your house before 10:30 a.m. because it's your job and your wife should get up. What a world! If one was feeling uncharitable, one might describe the trumpet as a machine where you put in compressed air and divorce comes out, but despite this, despite operating a piece of biblical demolition equipment inside the home every bright cold morning of his wife's one and only life, the trumpet is not the most annoying thing about my husband. It's hilarious to me that Al Capone was an amazing tipper. I get why it took so long to catch him. Me and the other caddies watching Al Capone beat a guy to death with a golf club after he gave each of us the 2022 equivalent of $1,600. Yeah, Capone did some horrible things, but he wasn't a complete monster. My grandfather's family lived in the Italian neighborhood around Hull House. They were literally next door, so they knew him. Here's some of what my grandfather used to say. Capone didn't want any kids getting caught in any crossfire or, worse, to witness what was going on, so if they were going to use the sandlot where they all played, he'd give the older kids a $20 and tell them to get everybody ice cream. He'd also give Jane Addams money to put on socials to get the kids off the streets while all the mobsters would be shooting at each other. He also gave my great-grandfather a car as a thank you for cakes he made for Capone that, as far as the FBI is concerned, were not carrying secret messages. Although considering the car was riddled with bullet holes and had a massive bloodstain on the front seat, it might have been less a thank you and more a convenient way to get rid of evidence. At the Mariners bar, sorry mates, I can't go out today. My boat's trans mask now. He's more comfortable with him. He just went through top surgery to get his sails removed and he's recovering. Bluebeard and pronouns the woke pirate. Arg, so he's gotten a mastectomy. Well, I'm glad that he's discovered himself. A. Fuck all the way off. That pun is a nightmare. My partner also agreed once I explained that yes, the boat had his sails, curving hand gestures, removed. B. By way of exposing my secret identity as an international person of mystery, I spent quite a bit of time at sea with Eastern European guys. Cargo ships are therefore, in my head, male, because they are in Polish, etc. Sailing vessels may or may not be female, depending on context. C. My partner points out that there's a P.G. Wodehouse story where Jeeves makes a point of referring to a motor ship as he, specifically with references to his large engine rather than sails. D. For the people wondering what happened to the woke pirate's exes, consider how many of his ship's company are nice young men with terrible facial hair. Shout out to Not Oliver, last seen up the mast of a traditional boat. What really bothers me is that Channing Tatum may look like a thumb, but he's a really cool dude. Like, he's openly bi and clearly is obsessed with his family and apparently loves fairies, and there was that time he helped Stan Lee offstage BC. He's a gentleman and his favorite Disney character is the sentient broom from Fantasia, and he's been outspoken about gender equality and stuff, and also his wife is hot as hell. But his fan base is essentially like 40, 60-year-old women who are like, "Oh, abs muscles dance, lil bitch!" And it's created this V-specific image of Channing Tatum in the media when in reality his image should be giant fucking nerd in love W his amazing wife. Hello, I'd just like to publicly apologize for calling Channing Tatum a thumb at the beginning of this post. It's been bugging me for days and he doesn't deserve that. He's just out there trying to live his best life. I think he and the hot wife divorced, which is sad. Also, Gambit is his favorite X-Man, and as a fellow bisexual disaster Gambit stan, I think that's very sexy of him, and I will fight anyone for him. Mary Shelley once said, "The history of villains is much more entertaining than that of heroes, because monsters are not born, they are created. They do not emerge from emptiness or darkness of their own accord, but are shaped by circumstances, by the wounds of the world around them. They reflect the depths of human pain, rejection, loneliness, misunderstanding. A hero is defined by his acts of bravery, but a villain is the result of a heart that was once pure and ended up corrupted. Monsters in their tragedy show us what could happen to us all if the world were to turn its back on us. I like when the bus stops directly in front of you out of the line of waiting people and opens its doors. Chosen by the Dragon. I hate this post. Ever since I read it, I can't help but think chosen by the dragon whenever the bus stops in front of me, or denied by the dragon when it doesn't. Every single time. That's a minimum of 10 times a week. Do you know how annoying that is? I recently found out why my mom would never sleep around me when I was a kid. Like, she'd never let herself take naps or sleep if I was awake, ever. Or if she did, she would lock her bedroom door. So when I was 6, I was asleep in my bed in the middle of the night when I hear a loud bang like a pot being dropped and come out to the living room to see my mom standing by the window with just a huge pile of spaghetti all over the sill and a pot on the ground, and I'm like, "Are you gonna eat all that?" And y'all, she gets big mad and yells at me and chases me to my room, but then a little while later a bunch of cops show up and ask me a bunch of random-ass questions about my art. Like this one cop lady keeps asking me to draw dragons for her, and they seem mad as hell. I didn't want to get arrested, so I just never asked my mom for spaghettis after that. Lesson learned. Don't ask mom for spaghettis or she'll call the damn police on you. So I have this memory in my head, and it goes unquestioned until I say it out loud for the first time a few months back. And as soon as I say the words, "When I was 6, my mom called the cops on me for asking for spaghettis," my adult logic slams into place and is like, "Hang on, your mother definitely did not call the police on a 6-year-old for asking for spaghetti. So obviously that's not what really went down." I call up my mom to tell her how I remember it, and on top of her figuring out why her kid has always been really cagey around spaghettis for the last 3 decades, she tells me what really happened. So on that night, a man tried to break into our house through the front window. It was just my mom and her kids, so she did what she felt she had to, and shot him in the head. He'd been wearing a helmet, which landed on the floor under the window. Now I just want y'all to put yourselves in my mom's shoes for a minute here. This woman has just taken a human life. The trauma of that, the instant agony, the panic, the guilt, the fear, all of it hitting her at once. Her only solace, the knowledge that her children are safe. She protected her daughters. No matter the cost to her soul, her children are safe. Then she looks up and sees her 6-year-old staring at the inside of this man's head before saying, "Are you gonna eat all that? Are you gonna let the government tell you what your gender is? That doesn't sound like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to me. Protect your individual freedoms and call your senator. We want the government to stay out of our pants. Gender freedom now. 2 men in your neighborhood are married to each other. Congratulate them for exercising their American right to follow the footsteps of our founding fathers. They've got a fully American spirit of freedom and rebellion. God bless the USA. Your coworker has a different religion from yours? Well, that's just interesting, and you should talk about it on your union-approved lunch break. The United States of America was founded on freedom of religion, and anyone should be allowed to seek the American dream. You think someone might be in this great country illegally? No, you don't. No one is in this country illegally. The minute anyone steps on our sovereign soil, they're your fellow American, and where they come from is no one's business. I hate this idea of a cat distribution system. Most of the time people end up with a cat because they're feeding one that belongs to someone else. If a cat is visiting your house, it doesn't mean they've chosen you. It just means they like to visit your house. It's heartbreaking for people to lose cats in this way. Somebody is doing this to a cat in my family at the moment. I can think of a really easy solution to this problem. Fascism in play. Vampire. The Masquerade is not a fascist-friendly game. If you are a neo-Nazi, alt-righter, or whatever you're calling yourself nowadays, we urge you to put this book down and call someone who you trust to talk about where you went so wrong in your life. Only thing that comes to mind today. Fun story. When I was actively being stalked, both online and IRL, I contacted the police exactly one time. I showed them the physical notes that had been left under the wiper blade on my car after I blocked the man on social media. I showed them the previous Facebook messages this man had sent me that described, in detail, what he wanted to do to me. The police said they couldn't help me because the man had not actually physically done any of those things to me. He just talked about his desires. They even made excuses for him. He's awkward. He's lonely. You're pretty. It's a compliment. So friendly reminder that when a man with a record and weapons makes verbal written threats against a woman, there's nothing police can do. But when a frustrated woman being denied medical coverage with no record and no weapons makes a verbal threat against a corporation, she's arrested immediately. If I was a famous author, I would publish a book with 10 different endings which all went to print with varying degrees of rarity, but not tell the fans about it so that I could watch their confusion as they disagree over how the story ended. Then, when they figured it out, I would come clean, telling them that I had released 11 alternate endings and watch them panic again as they all try to find the last ending. Apparently, Satan wants a writing career. Cue debates about which one is canon, and do we actually have 10 different AUs? Also, bonus points for changing all endgame ships, major character deaths, and overall happiness, sadness of the ending. Extra bonus points if at least one is a big twist, another is an "it was all a dream," and a third is a heart-wrenching punch-to-the-gut, cry-your-eyes-out ending. and then refusing to clarify in interviews which one you want to be the real ending. We should all be thankful that anti-thunderstorms with flashes of extreme darkness during the day, followed by loud, high-pitched screeches, don't exist. I'm going to have to say this post is slightly inaccurate. A true anti-thunderstorm would be flashes of extreme darkness during the day, followed by a short period of absolute, deafening silence. If it's anti in all ways, the sound would come before the flash. So imagine, if you will, a nice, pleasant day. You're walking with your dog, the birds are chirping, the sky is blue with not a cloud in sight. Your dog is the first to notice, its ears pinned back as the sound reaches, too high yet for you to hear. It whimpers and paws at the ground. You start to wonder what is happening when you hear it. A shriek, high and deafening, constantly falling like a shepherd tone illusion. The sound is so loud and unnerving it causes life to come to a grinding halt before the world is plunged into darkness. I've realized why people make sculptures of their old lovers BC. They get to hold their face again. Imagine sculpting your old lover and getting frustrated because you just can't get their features right, and suddenly you realize you don't fully remember what they look like and that their memory is fading. The bit about reading faster than people can talk hits home for me. Listening to video or audiobooks or podcasts is like processing information in slow motion. Also, we should talk about how people tend to trust video more and how that's messing with critical thinking. I am slowly losing my mind over the shift towards video as the default media format. I do not find this to be an efficient way to absorb information. I am bored and distracted by the time the largely unnecessary introduction is over. I can't use Ctrl+F to find the specific information I'm looking for. If there are instructions to follow, I don't want to have to constantly pause and back up to the part I need. At least give me a fucking transcript. I can read faster than you can talk, and these videos are wasting my time. What goes on here? Texas gave up that land so they could keep slavery. When Texas sought to enter the Union in 1845 as a slave state, federal law in the United States, based on the Missouri Compromise, prohibited slavery north of 36°30 parallel north. Under the Compromise of 1850, Texas surrendered its lands north of 36°30 latitude. Tell me more about how critical race theory shouldn't be taught in school. I am a grown-ass man, and I just learned about this 5 minutes ago. Fuck everything about trying to hide the sins of our past. I just learned this too. I hate it when history has been whitewashed. Should we feel guilty for the sins of our fathers? No. But we should be aware so we do not keep in place those systematically prejudicial things that came before us. For want of better phrasing, scariest man in the world needs wife's approval. This is marriage. That's right. He looks back at the guy like, see that? She said, yes, you're so fucked. Like, guys, Sparta was so kick-ass sometimes when it came to women. Spartan women were given these small knives so that if their husbands came home and tried to hit them or assault them, they had a weapon within reach. That weapon was for cutting their husbands' fucking faces so that when he went out in public, everyone would know he was an asshole, abusing jerkface, and they would publicly shame him. Goddess, matriarchy, female wisdom, girl, your civic rights. But I didn't and still don't like making a cult of women's knowledge, preening ourselves on knowing things men don't know, women's deep irrational wisdom, women's instinctive knowledge of nature, and so on. All that all too often merely reinforces the masculinist idea of women as primitive and inferior. Women's knowledge is elementary, primitive, always down below at the dark roots, while men get to cultivate and own the flowers and crops that come up into the light. But why should women keep talking baby talk, while men get to grow up? Why should women feel blindly while men get to think? Ursula K. Le Guin. Otawindi. I feel that. But I wonder if this is like the debates around second versus third wave feminism? Like women shouldn't be restricted to deep natural wisdom. But if that's the way she wants to frame it, more power to her? A sort of you do you type situation? Like, is dressing up scantily submitting to the male gaze or liberating? Is dressing up conservatively submitting to male domination or liberating? IDK, shouldn't we just let women do as they please, as long as they're not oppressing anyone else? I guess as a fourth wave feminist, it's important to recognize that any gender binary is itself oppressive. Like, things aren't just men versus women, it's an intersectional spectrum.